So I'm on the left of the door, Mike's on the right. As the door comes open from right to left, it swings in. I can see the living room to my right. And so I cut the pie, I break it down till my real estate runs out. And then I have no option but to step into the doorway to see down the hall. And this whole time, people are yelling, please search one, please search one. And this is everybody at this point. This isn't just me.
Yeah.
So there's no way the people inside didn't hear. Impossible. I mean, the person upstairs heard us and came out. So there's no way the people in that apartment didn't hear. So as soon as I put my body in this door frame, I see down the hall and I see something different than I've seen my entire career.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I'm joined today by light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, it's the Popo.
What's going up, brother? What's up?
What's up, brother?
Oh, you know, not too blessed to be stressed, too anointed to be disappointed.
Man.
You know, I got him for days.
I heard that, man. I heard that. What's going on with you, Billy?
Hey, I feel more official with my new table here.
Bro, Billy has
I got a producer table now.
He does.
You know what's funny is I remember when Billy didn't have a chair.
I was sitting on his baby chair, like literally.
Yeah, now he's got a table.
Yeah.
We getting there, y'all. We getting there.
We are moving up. You know, I got the nice sign in the background with a fresh wall. So we are moving up. It actually looks pretty legit now. And we also are joined by a very, very special guest who I met 2 weeks ago at Officer Tatum's book signing party. And after meeting this gentleman, just a phenomenal guy, and really just has a really good heart. And so I wanted to bring him on so that way the rest of the world could hear his heart and hear how we all might be able to learn from him. So with that being said, I want to introduce our special guest, Mr. John Mattingly. And am I saying that right?
Yeah, Mattingly, however you want to say it.
All right.
It was a hard T. It was like hard Mattingly.
That's my
messes it up. It's all good.
That's my Ebonics kicking in. But we're good to go. So John, man, thanks for being with us today, man. It's a true pleasure and true honor to have you here. I know we've been playing kind of email tag and text tag, so I know it gets hard. But man, thanks for being here, brother.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm excited to be here, buddy.
Man, so where are you located right now?
I'm in Central Kentucky, back and forth between that and Nashville.
Nice, man. Nashville, I keep hearing, is a spot to go to. Everybody and their mom is moving to Nashville, Tennessee. Or Tennessee in general.
Nashville's a good spot, man. It's laid back, and it's kind of what Louisville used to be, just on a nicer scale.
You guys say that Louisville. You gotta say it right. You'll get yelled at. If you say like Louisville, they'll get at you.
Oh, it's not Louisville? Because you leave it to me, I'll call it Louisville.
That's what I said. They was like, no, it's Louisville.
Louisville.
Southern twang on Louisville.
Oh, man. Man, well, you know, you're welcome. You could thank us Californians for driving the property taxes up there, because Californians out here messing it up for everybody right now.
Oh, they are, because everybody's leaving you.
Yeah, rightfully so. Don't nobody want to be in Cali right now.
Oh, man. Well, nobody want to be in Columbus either, man. I just saw like a recent, was it a shooting or something like that, or some crazy, I don't know if it was an officer-involved shooting or what, but it was something crazy.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, ATF agent got shot here last week. We had another high-profile one where let me think what I can say on here. A gentleman and his two children were killed. I think one was 6 and one was 9.
I think that's the one I'm talking about. Yeah, and it was like all over the news or something like that. And I was like, man, that's Columbus. Yeah. That's where AJ's at.
Yeah, and then we also made the news because our we broke our homicide record, but it's like going up at an alarming rate. So we made national news for that too.
Congratulations on that, man.
Yeah, we did too. Yeah.
Congrats, guys.
Number one, baby.
Yeah. It's definitely nothing to be proud of, but things are crazy right now here in the city, that's for sure.
Man, it's like that everywhere, man. But we just, we need good people out there like you guys and everybody else to continue to put their front foot before the other one, so that way we can just move forward in a positive direction. But with that being said, man, I want to get into today's topic, because this is one that is going to be a good one. And if you guys are not familiar with John, actually, let me ask John, why do people know you, or why? I'm not leaving it at that. Why would people know you, John?
I guess from the infamous hashtag of Breonna Taylor. Unfortunately, I was the sergeant that was shot during that incident back in March of 2020, right before the George Floyd incident, right before everything just blew up. So that's where they know my name from.
Man, that's crazy. And we actually did a Breonna Taylor episode, and I was talking to John through dialogue throughout the week, and John was telling me that I guess your wife had listened to it.
Yeah.
And you had said something that actually really made me feel good about what you said, was that your wife listened to it and that she felt that it was a good depiction for the average Joe to kind of understand the circumstances. And so can you kind of tell me about what that conversation was like with your wife? And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm going somewhere with that conversation.
Yeah. So she called me in the other room and she was listening to your podcast. I was like, who's that? She says, Ryan, the guy we met. I was like, okay, cool. So I was listening to some of it, and she said, this guy is able to put things on a civilian level for them to understand. And he's been spot on just about everything on this case, that, if the media or if another police officer tries to explain it, either they use terminology that the average citizen doesn't understand, or they use hyperbole and it gets blown out of proportion. She said, Ryan put it right there where people could understand it, just put it on a platter. And if people were willing to listen, they did. If they didn't, that's up to them, but at least they got the truth on a level that they could understand it.
You sure she said Ryan or AJ?
Well, she said both of them. I give credit, AJ. He just happens to know Ryan.
Well, they couldn't understand AJ because he was speaking his little ebonics or whatever, but AJ was preaching to the cats in the hood. But irregardless, but Matt, honestly, that's a true honor to hear that because you guys were directly impacted by this whole situation. It's not like we're talking to somebody that, heard about this Breonna Taylor case and, they listened to a podcast. No, you guys were the ones that were going through it. And so that meant the world to me to know that not only one, that, she was able to understand what we were trying to convey, but two, that she felt it was a fair and honest opinion. Because one of the last things I want to do is put somebody in a position to where it makes it feel like I'm just contributing to the false narrative that's out there. And so that's why I appreciated that. And I'm sure AJ would too.
I was going to say, from our talk, when we talked in Phoenix, that if I felt you had said something that was off base or whatever, I'd let you know. Cause you got to be your own best supporter out here, cause other people just don't get it.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. I know AJ had a few questions before we kind of get into the whole rundown, because what I do want to do today is I want to talk about your side and your perspective of what you went through. We kind of gave our perspective to the world of what we saw, what we evaluated, and just our experience as police officers. But it's another thing when you're the person going through it. It's another thing when you're the officer that's, put, blasted on the headlines, your wife, your family, everybody else. So we're going to get to that soon, but I want to toss it over to AJ, because AJ himself has gone through some stuff when it comes to national headlines. And I know he had some questions as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely have questions because, as you said, Ryan, I've had the not so pleasurable honor of having my name and picture on national news, and I've dealt with those storms. But before I even get to those, I really just want to hear what you have to say, like the story, how you came about, the details of that day, and then we can unpack all that later. I don't want the listeners and viewers to, be distracted by that. So
let's jump into it. So,
all right, man, I'll give you the best overview I can give you, because if I told you everything, it's about a 4-hour ordeal, and I know
I believe it.
So, about two weeks prior to this, well, I'll go back even further than that. About 2.5 months before this incident, I had moved from our major case unit, which was responsible for, wiretaps. We had DEA and FBI task force officers that reported to me. And so we were busy. I mean, it was a day and night, go thing. And we'd work 12, 14, 16-hour days. And I had done this type of work as far as frontline all in for almost 20 years. And I knew my career was starting to wind down. I knew I had 3-4 years left before I wanted to get out and do something else. So I thought, man, I'm gonna back off this unit. And we had what's called the parcel interdiction unit that opened up. And I said, that would be a good one, because I still get to go have fun with the guys. I still get to do, package deliveries, different things, but I won't be doing 4, 5, 6 warrants a week. I won't be doing rips on cars. I can back off just a little bit, because I always heard that if a guy's real active in their career, by the end of their career, if they just totally stop, then they start filling that void of that need, of that drive, of that go with something else. And half the time it's not healthy. Yep. So I thought, man, I'm going to back off. I'm going to go to a spot that I've got friends in, number one, but that I can still enjoy, still get a lot of dope off the street. And we were getting tablefuls of dope every week. And so the guy in this other unit, we were in a unit that had about 50 guys in it, but we had different responsibilities. And this guy came to me and he said, man, can you look through the parcels through Postal and see if Jamarcus Glover at that address on Springfield Drive is getting any packages? And I said, man, I don't have any contact with Postal because a couple of years prior to me going to that spot, the postal inspector and one of our guys in our department had got into it, and the childishness of it, you know how it is with politics, those bridges were burned and the fences were never mended. So a smaller department took over working with Postal. We still did UPS, FedEx, things like that, but we didn't deal with Postal at all. So I said, man, I don't have contacts with them, but I know the guys in the other department that do. I can reach out to them. So I reached out to them. They said, man, we might have something on it. The name sounds familiar. One of the guys might be working it. We'll get back with you. I said, cool. I told him that. A couple of weeks later, we were at UPS pulling packages, and I ran into the guy from that unit. I said, did you ever find out anything on that address I gave you? He said, yeah, I've already talked to the detective on the case. We figured out it's a different guy, same last name, first names both start with J, but a different person. And I said, cool. I really don't care. I don't have anything invested in it. Just was asking. Next day I saw that detective in the office. We passing. I said, man, I talked to the Shavely guy last night, and he said it was a different guy. And the detective on the case said, yeah, man, he told me, and it's too bad. I just want to do a rip. Now I've got to write all these warrants because he had to write 5 warrants in this case. I said, sorry, man, that was early January. So fast forward to early March, we get an email saying we have an intensive manpower event taking place on the night of March 12th. That'll go into the 13th. We're serving 5 warrants. Here's the addresses. Can we get some people to help us? I looked at the addresses. I said, well, I'm going to be out that night at FedEx anyway. I can go straight from that to these warrants because the brief was at 10 at night. I said, yeah, I'll do it, but give me the Springfield address because it's an apartment. And I knew the other one was trap houses. And if you've ever, I'm sure you guys have been involved in those trap houses. They're nasty. You get a crowd of people that come. I've done so many of those. I was just sick of it. Didn't want to dig through all the nastiness in the house. I said, I'll take the apartment. It's got to be easier, right? And I said, give me the easy one. Well, that backfired on me big time. But,
yes, it did. So
in this whole thing, people have said, man, don't you remember the conversation back in January of that Springfield address? And I said, we wrote in parcel unit, we wrote 40, 50 warrants a week that I had to look over and approve. One address from 2.5 months ago is not going to stick out in my head, especially one that we had no involvement in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so that's been one of the sticking points in this because Postal Service came out later and said, no, we never said there was any packages going to the address. And that was one of the sticking points in the warrant. Now, they do have pictures of him walking out from her apartment with postal packages in his hands. So we know he got them there. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's dealt with postal, and one of the things that was never explained to the public was if I'm getting dirty packages sent to a female's address, I'm not having them sent in my name. There's
Absolutely
no way.
Not.
That way we both have deniability. I can say, well, it didn't come in my name. And she can say, well, I have no idea whose packages came into my name. And so she has plausible deniability, and they can't stick the dope on anybody if it gets intercepted.
I was just going to ask if you could break that down. So when we talk about, just because we have like a civilians who listen to this as well. So when you talk about like the postage and like the packages coming in, they typically contain drugs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So
sorry to cut you off.
The drugs come in. Drugs come in to Joe Blow at either a vacant address or some girl that they've manipulated into getting packages. And then John goes and picks that package up or has the female bring it to him.
Yep.
That way, if it gets picked off before I get my hands on it, it's part of the game. You just lost that. No big deal. But nobody's going to jail. So that night we show up, we get our stuff together, we get the brief, we go in there. They're all on the board. I'm sure you've seen the pictures. And each apartment or each house has the officers that are designated to those places, what their role is. One's the RAM, one's the verification officer, and then who's in the stack. And when we came in, they all said, no knock warrant, no knock warrant. But above ours said, knock and announce. And so, which is not a big deal, but we were curious as to why. And they said, well, we've got a tracker on our guy. We've got a ping on his phone. We know where he's at. He's not going to that apartment. So that one doesn't need SWAT. So we're just going to knock that one. She's a heavyset female. Give her time to come to the door. That way, maybe she'll play ball and she'll roll on these guys because that's just the way it works. If you're nice and polite to people and you can get in their apartment kind of quiet without the neighborhood knowing, then a lot of times you can get them to flip because they don't want to go to prison. So we mount up, we go out that night. I go get a visual on the place to verify it to the guy who's sitting out watching it. When we come back, we all roll out. We go up to the apartment, knock on the door. And at first we didn't announce. Knocked again. Nobody came. About that time, the guy upstairs comes out and starts engaging with the detectives that are in the stack. And he's upset for whatever reason. He's loud. I think he was drunk. He was just being very loud. And they kept saying, get back in the house, get back in the house, get back in the house. And at that point, we started announcing, police search warrant, banging on the door, police search warrant. This lasted for about a minute. And being outside of somebody's door for a minute seems like an eternity. It's it's kind of like when you're at a red light in the middle of the night, nobody's around, the thing's sitting there red, and you're like, man, I want to run this thing because it feels like forever. And that's how it felt at that door. You don't know what's on the other side. You had some intelligence that says it's only a female on the other side, but you can never trust that fully. We just know how it is. And so after about a minute, I looked back at my lieutenant and I said, kind of gave him the head nod, like, what are we doing here? And he says, go ahead and hit it. So I looked at Mike, who I'm with right now, and I said, man, hit the door. So he hit it. On the third hit, it comes flying open. And, there's been reports we were all stacked up in the fatal funnel. That's bull because, I've done probably over 2,000 search warrants. So I'm on the left of the door. Mike's on the right. As the door comes open from right to left, it swings in. I can see the living room to my right. And so I cut the pie. I break it down till my real estate runs out. And then I have no option but to step into the doorway to see down the hall. And this whole time, people are yelling, police search warrant, police search warrant. And this is everybody at this point. This isn't just me.
Yeah.
So there's no way the people inside didn't hear. Impossible. I mean, the person upstairs heard us and came out. So there's no way the people in that apartment didn't hear. So as soon as I put my body in this door frame, I see down the hall and I see something different than I've seen my entire career. So generally, if you've done search warrants, you go in and either you have somebody freaked out in bed or standing there going, oh my goodness, because it's overwhelming when the door gets knocked down, or you have somebody run from it. Occasionally you'll have somebody fight or come at you. But in this case, when I turned that corner down the hall, there were two people side by side, almost as one person facing us. And my brain went, this ain't right. But in that split second, it was too late. He had fired a gun, struck me in my upper leg, and I returned 4 shots. And at that point, my leg was working on just tendon and bone. And so my left leg was giving out. I went behind the door and popped back around and fired 2 more rounds. And that's when Miles stepped up and basically stepped on me so I could get out of harm's way. And he was shooting down the hall. And I get to the parking lot, and Mike and my lieutenant get a tourniquet, get it on my leg. And that's where we're at.
Man. Whew, that's a lot. So, real quick, what size round did he use to fire at you guys? Was it a 9? I mean, not that it matters.
9mm.
So 9mm. Okay.
Yeah.
So just so you guys are listeners that are listening into this, I want you guys to know that these operations are not uncommon. I mean, what Sarge is talking about right now, these are things that I've been involved in. I've done numerous amounts of search warrants. You have a briefing beforehand, and the reason I bring it up is because the media almost tried to spin it like they weren't prepared. They didn't know whose door they were knocking on. They spun it to where it was a no-knock warrant, and they didn't knock at all. These were all the things that was being said in the media, which anybody who's been in this profession long enough knows that you just don't walk up to a judge and they randomly sign a search warrant and then you go hit a random house. I've gotten my search warrants picked apart by judges sometimes with red pens, like, nope, you can't do this. Nope, you can't do that. Who's doing this? And then you have these briefs to go over what the plan is. And then we call it a back brief that everybody has to regurgitate what their assignment is. So that way, when you show up at the house, nobody makes a mistake. I bring all this up to say because the way this was being portrayed in the media, it made it seem like this was like, the most unorganized. They shouldn't have signed off on it, all this other nonsense, which I had a hunch, which my hunch was correct, that's not how it played out. Am I right in saying that, AJ?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as you said, I've had my fair share of search warrants, and all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. That's for sure. And we are not the final step, as Ryan said. Like when we write these warrants up, we have to take them to a judge for the judge to lay eyes on. Like we can't, at least here, we can't email. Like we have to physically take the warrant to the judge, whether it's at their house, whether it's at their office, whether they're on vacation at the golf course, like you name it. We've delivered these warrants to them. They lay eyes on them, they review them, and then they sign them. So I think that was a lot of the confusion as well, because as I'm sure you both know, and as a lot of our listeners know, this had a ripple effect throughout the country and really eliminated no-knock warrants nationwide.
Which is funny because it wasn't a no-knock warrant. Exactly. Right. So let me ask you, how did that come to be? How did that whole thing come to be where they made the focus of this no-knock warrants, which it wasn't even a no-knock warrant. You guys knocked, announced yourself, and all the other stuff. So how did that become the center of all this scrutiny?
Well, because on the face of the warrant, when they got the warrant signed, they didn't know exactly where Jamarcus Glover would be. And this dude had a pretty extensive history with guns and drugs and fleeing and all that. So they took all the locations that he could possibly be at that night and wrote them all as no knocks. And that's why this one was changed to a knock and announce, because it no longer fit the parameter because he wasn't there. And he was the reason for the no knock, not just the house. So people get that all screwed up and all messed up. And even though the judge signed it as a no knock, it was executed as a knock and announce. And that's just one of the, 7 or 8 big lies that have been put out.
Well, it shows you guys went the extra mile too. It shows that you guys went the extra mile from even when the judge signed it. You guys said, no. This one's going to be a little different. So we're going to alter it to make a knock and announce. So it just kind of almost shows like, hey, look, even though the judge signed off on something, we're still going to do it this way because it's more safer, essentially, to do it this way for that circumstance.
It's just the right thing to do too, because the other one didn't really fall under the guidelines. Mm-hmm. So, and again, we knocked way too long and announced. Typically, you're looking at 10 seconds, according to what the Supreme Court says, reasonable amount of time. That's generally what we give them. And the whole time my gut's going, while we're at that door going, man, this don't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And every time, and you know as well as I do, that gut instinct's pretty accurate a lot of times on the street. When those hairs go up on the back of your neck, you're getting ready to get into something.
Absolutely. So let me catch everybody up just really quick. So you get intel that drugs are being delivered to an address. A search warrant is wrote for a lot of different locations. You jump on a particular address. You go there, you stack up, you clearly do the knock and announce. You knock for roughly a minute, bang, 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 police, search warrant. You hit the door. You don't only get shot at, you get shot in your leg, return fire. Unfortunately, during this exchange of gunfire, as you said, there were 2 people in the hallway. One was a male who I am assuming, and I'm just going to talk like I don't know anything about the case because someone will listen to this and not know anything about it. Right. There was a male who was the one who fired the shot at you, correct?
Correct.
And then beside him was Breonna Taylor, a female who was in the house as well. So during this exchange, Breonna Taylor gets shot. She passes away. What happens after that?
Well, let me go back to the hallway real quick, just to give people a visual. Because people assume it's a normal hallway. This is a very narrow hallway, and it had an inset. So as the hallway goes down, it curved. It had a 90-degree in it that was inset for a second bedroom and then their master bedroom. And he was on the very edge of that wall. She took up a lot of the hallway herself. Yeah. And he just happened to be partially in the hall and partially. And as soon as he shot, his cowardice dove behind the wall and left her hanging there. And we believe she was trying to follow him into the bedroom. That's when she came into the line of fire.
Wow.
And that's good though, because I've never heard that before. So that's good for me.
Neither have I. Well. And the last thing I want to touch on before we move on is that when John is saying they're standing at that doorway and it feels like forever, I just recently did a video probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago of a shooting in Houston, Texas, where the guys are serving an arrest warrant. They're calling for the guy to come out. And his girl or his mom is already outside. They're waiting in the doorway for him to come out. And next thing you know, you just hear automatic gunfire come from inside that house. And literally the 2 officers that are at the doorstep get shot. One of them ends up dying right there on the doorstep. The other one is able to crawl away and get to safety, and he's able to be saved. But multiple officers were shot. But I bring that situation to compare what it feels like when you're standing on a doorway serving a warrant. You don't know what you're getting into. Like, you don't know. You prepared all this time. You spent time thinking about who could be there, who's inside, trying to do, dot all your I's, cross all your T's. But when the rubber meets the road, when you're standing at that doorway, the only person that's going to dictate what happens after that is the person inside. So that's a real fear that every single officer, no matter whether you've been on the SWAT team or you just first day on the job, it's a real fear that every single officer has. And I wanted to point that out. So go ahead, AJ. But I know you said, so what happens next after this occurs?
All right. So this happened on March 13th. Now, March 13th, 2020, that's the day that the federal government shut everything down because of COVID. So every day on the news, you had Trump, you had everybody's governors, the mayors giving all their briefs. So we thought for the first couple of weeks, we thought, oh, good, we kind of, we're going to stay under the radar because there's more pressing things to the press. And as well as I do, that ever since, especially Michael Brown, that anytime somebody's shot, and this isn't even the right thing to do, but every time somebody's shot, when you're calling your buddies, man, we just were involved in a shooting, what do we ask? Were they white or black? Not was it a good shoot? It's were they white or black? And it should just be simply, was it a good shoot? Race shouldn't matter. But we all know that it's a boiling point that's gonna tip as soon as it's a white cop and a black suspect every time, no matter what the circumstances are. So in this one, though, we thought, man, maybe we got past this initial push and we're going to be okay. Now, her family was doing little protests and stuff, but it was very small, 20, 30 people. Her attorney came out and he started saying some outlandish stuff. We were at the wrong place. She didn't even know Jamarcus Glover. She wasn't on the warrant. He even made some statements that we were there to rob them. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, we just did a brief with 50 people. Now we're going to go rob these people. That makes absolutely no, but people were believing it. Social media is jumping all over it, starting to believe this stuff. And then Ahmaud Arbery happened. And so Ben Crump was on that case and he got loud like he always does. And then we had one of Breonna Taylor's family civil attorney knew Ben Crump from a previous case that she had worked on. So she reached out to him and he jumped on the case. And so all this is before George Floyd. So this is mid-May, things start picking up and you can feel the tension starting to rise. And so we started reaching out to people. I called our department, was like, hey, can we start releasing some factual stuff on this case? Because they weren't refuting any of the lies. There were 7, 8, 9 huge lies out there that would make anybody look at it and go, man, that's messed up. That's a bad case. But they were refusing to get up and at least go, hey, no, that's not true. Here's the warrant. She was on it. Hey, no, all these things. And they sat on their hands. So we reached out and said, man, can you do something about it? Can you at least put out the truth? And they said, no, we don't want to set precedent for future cases. And we're like, are you kidding me? You'd rather the city burn than set precedent for future cases, even though you do what you want when you want anyway. Yeah. So that was from the department. So on May, I believe it was 17th, and this was about a week and a half before everything blew up and started, I reached out to our city council president, who used to be a police officer. He's a retired cop, but he's our council president now. He taught me in the academy. He was one of our instructors. I reached out to him and I was like, hey, David, here's everything the media is saying. Here's all the truth. So you have it all. Can you please say something? Because the mayor's not doing it. And he responded back in text, yeah, the mayor's a jackass. I'll put it out. I'll hold a press conference Monday and put it all out. I said, well, you better, because our city's going to burn. This is picking up speed. You can feel it in the air. You can just feel the tension. He said, yeah, I'll take care of it. Never did anything about it. Matter of fact, he got on the news ripping us, talking about the no-knock warrant and what we shouldn't have done. And I'm going, man, you're such a political coward. I mean, they all just come out of the woodwork during this stuff. And so then George Floyd happened. And instantly, it was like it just exploded. And the first night of the riots in Louisville, there were 7 people shot. And here's a kicker. This just goes to show you how things are. So one of the subjects that got shot, there was tens of 20, 30,000 people downtown. I mean, it was crazy. They were breaking windows. They were doing all the stuff you saw on TV, burning things. So this shooting happens. 7 people go down. One of the guys probably would have died if our SWAT team hadn't pulled up in their Bear, cleared the crowd out, loaded this guy up, saved his life, got him to the hospital. And 3 weeks later, he sues the police because they didn't wait for an ambulance. So they heard him put him in the Bear. Wow. And the ambulance would have never got there. The guy would have died. But that just goes to show you the mentality of the people that were protesting. So everything breaks loose. on May 31st, we get a call from the FBI that says, man, you got to get out of your house. Her family has put a hit out on you through their motorcycle club. They're part of a black motorcycle club in town that sells dope, moves guns, does all kinds of things. And so we had to find a place to go.
And this is the FBI. The FBI is calling you, not just you're not just your partner from the station or somebody said, hey, we heard that. No, this is the FBI calling you guys saying, hey, look, they put a hit out on you and your family. So this is a credible threat.
There was two different informants, one for the ATF and one that was in our narcotics unit. They didn't know each other were informants. And they both came with the same story to their handlers and said, man, they're going to kill these cops. And I've got some of them in text, and I've got others on recordings. And so the FBI interviewed both of them and realized the threat was credible. Mm-hmm. And so they said, man, we got to do something about this. Her birthday was coming up. They wanted to have something to celebrate, supposedly on a balloon release. And that being one of the officers or a family member, retaliated against. So we left our house. We had just bought this house. We'd been there 5 weeks, and we left the house and we ended up selling it. Never went back to it. Moved out of the city just because it was too dangerous. Man. For this reason. So 10 days later, the FBI closes this case. And if you've ever worked in the FBI cases, I had gone through the FBI process and been had the credentials through them. So I know what they do. So not fooling anybody when they say, oh, we just closed the case. It takes forever to open a case, number one. And once they open it, they don't like closing. They'll keep, heck, they've been investigating us on this case for a year and 10 months now. So I know they don't close cases quick. And they closed it and said the word in the office was, because I've got people from the FBI that called me, was that they didn't want to, it would look bad if they went after a national victim's mother. So the optics were bad. So even though they took hits out on cops, the FBI dropped this case, brushed it under the rug. And I've got my theories behind that, and it's in the book, and they're pretty credible theories, because the public safety director that came to work for Louisville, Amy Hess, she was the highest ranking FBI official, female official in their history. She was appointed to DC by James Comey. When she retired, she came to Louisville to work for our progressive mayor as our public safety director. Her best friend worked as the SAC, or the guy in charge of the FBI in Louisville. They talked every day, good friends. The theory is that she reached out to him on behalf of the mayor, who had taken Breonna Taylor's family side and wanted us fired, wanted us charged, all this stuff, but he couldn't do it. That he had her call it a favor in, because suddenly these guys who hadn't even talked to the informants said they were not credible. Mm-hmm. And so now the case was closed. And the caveat to that is that guy that was head of the FBI in Louisville is now in Amy Hess's old spot in DC. So one of those scratch my back, I scratch your type.
Man.
So I just want to touch on one more thing really quick before we go any further. You said that almost immediately or shortly after the incident, you were kind of like talking to your colleagues, or talking amongst others, and the general consensus was she was a female black that died, and thank God this hasn't caught on yet. And I know that statement might seem like clear to us because like we know political pressure, we know like the power of social media and certain people's agendas, but can you just like elaborate a little bit more to like our listeners on like why that's so important and why you felt that was so important in that time?
Yeah, so like I said, the pressures on this part of it started, it's always been there with black white, but it really picked up steam back in 2000. I think it was 15 with the Michael Brown thing, 14, 15, what that was. And everybody lumps in like Trayvon Martin, which that wasn't even a police issue.
I know.
They always lump it with the police. That drives me crazy. They've lumped the Ahmaud Arbery thing in with it. But anytime there's a white officer that's involved with the killing of a black person, whether it be justified or not, there's always additional scrutiny. And there's always, it's a little more, you got to tiptoe through the roses, basically.
Yeah.
And it depends on how strong your leadership is, if they're willing to come out and say, no, this was good. It may look bad on the surface, but we've got the information, the evidence that this is a good shoot, and we'll explain it to you and we'll give it to you. But a lot of them cower because they're looking at the next election or their next step in political office, and they don't want to ruffle feathers.
Well, and to add to that real quick, AJ,
yep.
From the flip side of it, what he's saying is absolutely true. I've had an officer involved shooting that I was involved in, and my legal representation, one of the first things they said to me when I sat down with them is, the general optics of your shoot is it was justified. Knowing the call for service and all other stuff, we know from the general optics it looks like it was justified. But the other thing you also have going for you is that you're a black officer and the guy you shot at was white. And the mere fact that is even a thing, to John's point, is like, why should that even be a thing? It should just be a thing that, hey, this guy was doing something he shouldn't have been doing. These were the circumstances which led you to shoot. That's what it should be based on. But we live in a society now where, from an optical standpoint, from a racial standpoint, we are making things more racial than they should be, than they need to be. I mean, there's no reason that race in this scenario should play a part. Now, don't get me wrong. I know in the past we've suffered from our as a country, we've had some racist antics that should have never occurred. But I had a conversation with the guy last night, and it's like, at what point do we draw a line and say we're going to move forward and realize that, hey, look, things are not like they used to be. And if they are, those people will be exposed. The moment you start making everything about racism, how are you going to identify the real racist stuff that exists? And that's what they try to do to my brother John here and anybody, and a lot of other people that are going through this.
Yeah. And we had some firsthand experience with this prior to this anyway. We have another guy that worked with us in our same unit 2 years prior to my incident, that they had done a controlled delivery on a package, had I think 10 pounds of meth in it. And as the guys picked it up in the truck, there was 3 or 4 guys in the truck. How many? There were 4 guys in the truck. Mike, again, that was with me on my shooting. He was there on this shooting as well. And my buddy went to approach the truck. When they pulled it in, they boxed it in, went to approach the truck, and the guy in the back seat pulled a 45, shot him. One went through his jaw and out the back, and one lodged in his forehead. And there were 2 people in the back seat, and one of the other officers with him shot through the back seat, through the window, through the door, and killed both occupants in the back seat. Well, they were white, and it was on the news maybe a day.
Wow.
And we never heard about it again.
Wow.
And so, yes, he got the shooter, but he also killed the passenger, because the Supreme Court has upheld this, that in those type situations, sometimes that's just it's part of the game. You risk your life and somebody else's, then you get caught up in it.
And when was that?
That was February 1st, 2018.
Same department.
Same department.
No, not a
So-
word.
The same unit.
The Breonna case, or the Breonna Taylor case, is that still active? Is that still pending?
Yes. Matter of fact, we're doing grand jury on that. The federal, the DOJ was doing it this week.
Okay. Well, I'll be careful what I.
You can say it. I'm not.
Well,
so much. I mean, if they're going to hang me, they're going to hang me.
Well, I mean, I'll just ask this. I asked why you felt it was important to say, that she was a female Black and that word was getting out. Do you believe that up until this point, political pressure has swayed the outcome thus far?
I'm part of it.
Okay.
Yes. I think our Attorney General did a very good job of looking at the facts, and he's a Black man, and he got destroyed for not pressing charges on us.
Yes, he got roasted. I remember that.
He looked at the rule of law, he looked at the case and the evidence and said, this doesn't fit anything, so we're not even presenting that part to the grand jury because there's no charges to present. And people were mad about that, but that's people that don't understand the court system. There's been plenty of times I've taken stuff to prosecutors and they're like, it doesn't really meet these elements. So we're not going forward, or we're doing the lesser included offenses, not these, because it doesn't meet the standard that case has to meet. And that's what this one did. And just like we weren't charged in that case, Kenneth Walker's charges were dropped because a reasonable jury or a reasonable person could say you could have a very good attorney and convince a jury that he had a right to believe that he was getting home invaded, because we can't prove he hurt us. We know he did. We think he did, but we can't prove it. And so if we can't prove that he hurt us, then a jury won't convict him on it. So they dismiss the charges on him. But, and that was praised, but then we're still criticized for what we did.
Exactly. We almost are held to this higher. I mean, and I've always said, as officers, we should be held to a higher standard. But that's only
but not unreasonable.
Exactly.
Not an unreasonable standard.
Exactly. And you can't, on one end, expect the court system to work this way for these people, and then to work a different way for law enforcement. And that's where my frustration has come. I mean, you go back to the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. People keep going on and on. He should have been charged. He should have been charged. Like, but if you look at the rule of law, if you take out all emotional bias out of it, you will understand clearly of why he got off the way he did. And so that kind of leads me to this next segment. If I want you to go over, because you said it a few times that there have been about 6, 7, or 8 different false narratives that were portrayed throughout this thing. I want you to kind of go through what those false narratives were, and kind of just briefly, it doesn't have to be a long thing, but briefly say why they were false. Because again, we all, the viewers that were seeing this on TV, seeing it on social media, we were seeing all these different narratives coming out, and almost so much you like, okay, what do I believe? What don't I believe? And unless you go out there and do it, exactly, and unless you go and do the digging, you don't know what to believe or what not to believe. So
someone just told me one a day.
Yeah. So what were some of those things that were going on that were false narratives?
All right, I'll bullet point them real quick. First, they said she wasn't on the warrant. Well, her name, her address, her car were all on the warrant. They said she was asleep in her bed. She wasn't asleep in her bed. She was prior to us getting there, but during the shooting, she was not asleep in her bed. They said the guy that we were going after was already locked up, which was a lie. Everything was simultaneous. They said, and here's a big one. They said we didn't find any dope or money or proceeds from that. Well, let me explain this real quick, because this has never been explained. Nobody knows about it. We had a warrant for narcotics, evidence, money, that type thing, to tie that crew together. Once the shooting took place, that warrant was put on the back burner, and our public integrity unit came in, and their responsibility is to secure the scene. They wrote their own warrant to collect evidence. So they came in, they took photos, collected evidence, shell casings of that scene, not for the narcotics. Once it was time for them to wrap up, it was about 7:30 in the morning. One of the detectives on the case called command and said, "Hey, our public integrity is wrapping up. Can we go in and finish the job? That's the whole reason we were here. Can we go serve this search warrant now?" And they were told, "No, you cannot do it." So naturally, no money was found, no drugs were found, no additional guns were found, because they weren't looked for. And
it's funny you bring that up, because we said that. Me and AJ said that. If you go back and listen to our podcast, we say when an officer involved shooting occurs, okay, well, time out. Now there's something else that you have to investigate. You're not going to continue to just go looking for drugs and all the other stuff. And so we said that. So it's funny how, all of a sudden. So that it's funny that you kind of confirm what we had said before we had even talked to you.
Yeah. And then some of the other things were like I said before, her attorney saying that we were there to rob them. In some of the pictures, there was a gas can inside there. And I don't know why they had a gas can in their apartment, but they did. And they said we came there and we were going to torch it afterwards and cover the evidence up. They said that, the big thing, that she's a decorated EMT. And again, I have nothing against Breonna Taylor. Don't know the girl. I think she was manipulated by these guys, in my honest opinion. But they said she was a decorated EMT. She was an EMT for 5 months and got fired. And that was in 2017. And this is 2020 or 2020 by the time we're here. So all these false narratives are put out. They failed to mention the fact, or they left out the fact that, she had rented a car in 2016 that a body was found in. The dude got murdered. So there's a lot of things that just weren't brought up, or the false narrative was put out.
Someone told me today that you guys were knocking so long outside that a neighbor came out and said either shut the F up or hit the place already.
I don't know the exact words, because I was the one knocking.
Yeah.
But Brett was dealing with him. Okay. And I remember finally, after they were arguing over this and it was so loud, I finally looked at Brett and said, "Relax, focus on what we're doing. You know that threat now. You can see that threat. We don't know the threat on the other side of the door."
Yeah. So I know what it's like to not to this extent. So please don't think that I'm comparing what I've been through to what you're going through, what your colleagues are going through. I'm just using it for an example leading up to a question. So I've had my name, my picture plastered all over social media, viral videos, activists speaking out about me, social media influencers, all these police experts speaking out about things and false narratives. And when I was going through that, what made it the hardest is I felt like I didn't have a voice. At the time, they were like active investigations, or I was told by my department that I couldn't talk about them because, for whatever reasons, right? And that's what was the hardest for me. So I just want to ask you this question, and you may have already said it, but I at least want to give you the opportunity to, if you haven't. If you could say one thing to the world right now, like just one message to get out to the world right now, what would it be?
I would say in these situations, and we got a basketball coach in town that always says this: let the cake bake. Mm-hmm. Sit back, wait for the evidence to come forward. Mm-hmm. Don't pay attention to some celebrity who has no idea what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Because one of the big things, defunding the police doesn't hurt the police as much as it hurts the public. Mm. And they've essentially done it without signing any laws into effect or passing any bills. What they've done is they've used social media. They've used these false stories and these narratives, and they've demoralized the police. They've chased off a bunch of good ones that could retire. Because I guarantee you, if all cops were eligible to retire right now, you'd have a very small force on your hands. Mm. And I would just say, support the police. Now, when we mess up, that's our department's job to step up and take that lick, because some of the things that police departments do cause some of this negative effect because they don't get out in front of anything. Mm. They try to sweep everything under the rug, the good, the bad, the ugly. And if you're going to be transparent, just be transparent. So some of that's on the department, but some of it's on the citizens, just to sit back, trust the process, see how it works out, and have a little faith in us.
Mm. Hey, Billy.
Yeah. So AJ's talked in the past about what it feels like to be going through something where you don't have a voice. How are you and the family doing now? Do you feel like you're kind of out of the thick of it? Is stuff still going on behind the scenes? How are you guys doing?
I think there's two sides of that coin. As far as the voice getting out, it took a year and 4 or 5 months before I was able to say anything because of the process. Before I retired, couldn't say a thing. And man, that just that eats up. I mean, you're sitting there ready to explode when you know the truth. And to this day, it's been what is this, December? So a year and 9 months. Our department still has not said one positive thing or come out and refuted one thing from this event. Not one thing. Our city or our department. And even our new chief that came in her very first press conference got up there and said, "Yeah, this is uncalled for. Breonna Taylor was killed in her bed or in her sleep, and we don't do this to white people, and we don't go to serve warrants on white people at midnight." I'm going, "Are you kidding me?"
Happens all the time.
And I'm going, "This is ridiculous." So the voice part was very frustrating. And now that I've been able to talk, it's been like a pressure relieved on that end. And at this point, I've been criticized so much, you almost don't care if people believe anymore. You want them to, because you want the truth. And it's not so much for me, it's for the next guy that's going to be involved in this and the next guy, because it's going to keep happening. Yeah. When you deal with criminals and police work, bad things are going to happen. It's a dirty job. And I've gotten through it, to this point. The flip side of that coin, though, you said things calm down. Things have calmed down on the surface. But because the FBI dropped the ball and didn't investigate this hit, now you got a person who offered $50,000 up front when they didn't have money. Now they've got $12 million from the city, almost $7 million in their GoFundMe. So now you've got $19 million access to do whatever you want with. You think people can't take you up on that offer? And so while the pressure's relieved, there's still that always in the back of your head watching. You always stay alert, you stay vigilant. And you try not to become too hyper vigilant because you get paranoid. Yeah. But you got to stay vigilant, and that wears on you after a while.
Mm-hmm. That's a sucky thing, man. Because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I just broke down a video the other day where this guy killed his ex-wife and then her nephew, and then they're chasing this guy. He starts shooting at police, and sadly there's an infant that's killed in the middle of it because the guy isn't, he has an infant in the car with him, and everybody is blaming, the media is trying to blame the cops, but nobody wants to point the finger at the guy that put that infant in the situation in the first place. And sadly in our profession, there's just some unfortunate circumstances that will happen when you're dealing with people that are not cooperating or not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and other people will be a consequence to their actions. And so this was one of those circumstances which, bro, I'm so glad that you were able to, one, that we were able to meet, but two, my goal is to be able to give you a voice when you don't have a voice. We had, and just for, if you're a listener to our podcast, we had Officer Dagis's wife on our podcast a few weeks ago, and he was going through a similar situation, not to the extent, but where he was blackballed by his department. He was fired. They were prosecuting him. Good news is that it went to court to trial last week, and he was found innocent of all charges, which is phenomenal. Now he's in the process of trying to get his job back. But the sad thing is, why do people like you have to go through these circumstances when all you were doing at the end of the day was you were trying to do your job? And that's what it comes down to.
Here's things that, so I know your purpose is to reach out to and bridge the gap, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to get people to understand where we come from. We're humans. We do all these things because we care. So 2 parts that I want people to know. Number one, I've been called a racist and a white supremacist and all, thousands upon thousands. Like Cardi B's video hit 16 million views and likes against us. And I'm going, that's 16 million people I'll never win back, probably. Wow. And so what I want people to understand is that if we white cops are so racist, then why are we risking our life every day going into the black neighborhood to save them? You know how many how many times my hands have plugged the hole on a black person that probably hated me, a gangbanger or a dope dealer, that now I'm trying to save his life, telling him to hang in there, hold on. Or then we turn around and we suit up and we go after the guy that shot him so he can get justice. If I'm that racist and that prejudiced, why am I willing to risk my life doing that? And the second thing is, we get demonized when there is an epidemic going on. I mean, we locked our country down over coronavirus, yet we had 100,000 deaths from overdose last year. And what are we doing about it? We're criticizing the cops who are trying to get the poison off the street. That doesn't make any sense. Man, and everybody's been affected by drugs. Every family has.
But they don't see it. They don't understand it. They don't know it. Go ahead, AJ.
I was just gonna say there's so many like layers to something like this. And like you just touched on it like real briefly, like when you mentioned that there was a new chief. So I take it once again, like this is just me talking as if I know nothing about the case. So I take it after everything happened, the chief that was in that seat during that time was like, bye, I gotta go, or were they fired, or how'd that come about?
So they got fired. So I think it was the second day of protest or third day, we had another police shooting during the protest. The police were down there clearing out an area, and one of the local barbecue joint guys was allowing a bunch of people to run into his shop. The police were shooting some pepper balls out. I guess he thought that they were shooting. So he gets his gun and opens the door and starts firing at the police. Wow. Well, he lost his life. And National Guard that was there with us, one of them actually shot him. And so that was another big uproar. Well, one of the cops didn't have their body cam on, so our mayor used that as a reason to fire the chief, saying, well, they didn't have camera on. So there you go. But that chief was a lame duck anyway, and he was a puppet. Our mayor's office runs our department. So we had that chief, then we had an interim chief that lasted about 2 or 3 months. He was weak also. They put stand down orders on the cops when people were out there assaulting people. I mean, it was unreal. Yeah. And then we had another interim chief come in for about another 3 or 4 months. And then we finally got the chief from Atlanta, which is the one I was speaking of, because she ran from that case down there because she couldn't handle it. And then she steps into the frying pan here.
And that's kind of like what I was getting at. So, like me being a minority myself, Ryan being a minority as well, us both having the passion that we do to help everyone out, right? But like also understanding like the complexities of like racism and, like all of these things. When something like this happens, what I want is the truth. Like what I want to be fed is the truth. I want to know exactly what happened, why it happened, how it happened. That way I can be a judge for your circumstance, right? Like if you messed up,
Right.
then I could go, absolutely, he messed up. What I don't want is the mayor, and I'm not saying that this happened in the case, I don't know. I'm guessing it is, judging based off of this conversation. What I don't want is a mayor who has his or her own political agenda to fire the head of the police and then put someone in that position that they can control, and then for that person to also feed me false narratives on what happens. Because what happens when this continuously happens over and over and over again is we become so blinded by these lies that we think that all police officers are racist. And then when something actually racist happened, it takes away the validity of it, because
Right.
now everything's racist. So in
Just
the
like
same
the
sense,
Floyd
nothing
case.
is racist. And it's frustrating for me because that, like, when I joined the police department, you couldn't convince me that police officers weren't racist. You couldn't. I for sure thought an overwhelming majority of police officers were racist. I stand here today as a police officer corrected. I now know that a very, 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 very small percent of police officers are racist. And it upsets me when I hear stories about chiefs being put in positions or higher ups being put in positions, or even like mayors and city council members who happen to know the truth in these situations, but they fail to speak on them because they have their own agendas. And it's frustrating. I'm sorry, I'm going on off a little tangent right now, but it's frustrating to me because if I was in the shoes of an activist, I would want the truth. I wouldn't want what I want to hear. I want the truth. That way, when I stand on the podium, when I open my phone on Instagram and Twitter, before I tweet, like, I know I'm putting out the facts. But it seems like, go ahead.
But that's where you got off track right there, because the activists you're talking about that get up there and stir the problems, they're not about activism. They're about money. That's all they're about. You know, Until Freedom came in, raked in a bunch of money. Black Lives Matter came in, raked in a bunch of money. Some of our local people came in and raked in a bunch of money. And then Breonna Taylor's mom ended up calling them out because they were supposed to give her money too. And they took all the money and left town,
So
when it was over.
Let me ask you the $1 million question. And I'm sure you've been asked this time and time again, but I have to get it in the podcast. Did you know the race of either individual in the house prior to shooting?
Yes.
Yeah, because they'll probably be on the warrant, because they was going to be on the warrant.
Yeah.
Did you shoot back because of their race?
No, I shot back to save my life. Period.
I had to put it out there because someone at some point is going to hit me up and be like, oh, well, you said all this, but you never asked. So I'm just putting that out there because I know how people operate. So
Well, my son-in-law is black and my grandkids are biracial. So I really don't have an affliction against black people.
Well,
Okay.
that's real quick, and we'll start wrapping things up here in a second. But I mean, how did your son-in-law? How long has he been your son-in-law for?
They've been together, since they were in like 8th grade. And they've got a 3-year-old now, and one will be 1 in February. So here's what happened when that went down. It's a good question. Before any of this went crazy, I went to him and I sat down with him and I said, look, ask me anything you've got, because I know you've got questions. I know your family's going to have questions. And he asked me a few, and I told him, and we talked about search warrants, and we talked about all kinds of things. Because the longer I went on in my career, as much as I enjoyed the rush of search warrants, as much as you enjoy going in finding dope like Christmas Day, it got to the point where I felt bad. I mean, I really did. When you go in there and you've got a little 5 or 6-year-old kid scared to death after you go in that house, I mean, you feel and it's just gut wrenching. And people think we're some kind of animals. No, man, we've got. I mean, it hurt when you go in those places. I'd feel horrible, and I look and go, man, no wonder these kids grow up to hate the police. I mean, look at their encounter with us just now. And so, we did that, and then some of their friends, my kids' friends, started saying stuff online, and they would get mad about it. I said, wait a minute. I said, the truth didn't out, number one, and number two, we're all raised to believe that the media isn't going to lie to you. The media is just going to give you the news. And I said, wait till everything pans out. And when the truth comes out, because I thought it would come out a lot quicker than it did. I didn't know it still wouldn't come out unless I put it out. And I said, once the truth comes out, then if they still have issues, then you can confront them about it. But until then, give people the benefit of the doubt. That was my whole thing. Give them the benefit of the doubt until the truth comes.
Man, that's it's what you just mentioned is something that's so true that all of us can relate to as police officers. Is one of the things that I don't think about often is when I go into these houses, whether it be on a search warrant or just a regular call for service, and you see the kids that running around, don't have any clothes on. There's roaches, there's rodents running around, and this is normal way of living for these people. And we have to go there and we have to either effect some type of arrest, take them out of a situation, call CPS, who CPS is going to take them out of the situation. And we become the demons. We're the ones that are the bad guys, when in all reality, the family members, whoever else has put them in that situation, they're the ones that are supposed to be the victims. And one of the things that we have to stop doing is we have to stop living with this victim mentality. We got to realize that we got to take responsibility for our actions and then draw a line in the sand and do better as people. But we're not doing that. We don't live in that type of society. So the last question I have for you, John, and then we'll wrap it up, is what would your message be to the commanders out there for police departments? Because this is your story is not the first where I've heard that the command staff has let their officers down. And I think that we do have a number of people that listen to this podcast. So what would your message to these people be that are running these departments? If you had one, because you're no longer an officer anymore, correct?
Correct. Retired.
Yeah. So now that you're retired, what would your message be to the leadership within the departments anytime? And obviously there's certain situations where officers have done something wrong, they jacked up, and if you don't give us a leg to stand on, then hey, you basically bought your own ticket. But a majority of the time, officers will do things with good intentions, with good hearts, and it just looks bad optically. What would you say to these leadership, the people in leadership out there?
Well, I think I would tell them what's in their title: be a leader. Stop being some puppet. You're not a politician. You're a police officer. If you want to be a politician, retire from this job and go do something else that requires, being savvy with the public or giving them what they want. You're here to do a job. You're asking your guys to do a job. And that's the most important thing, because these leaders come to you and say, we've got to stop crime. We need to go after this. We've got to, we've had holdups in this area. Go after these guys. And then when you go put hands on somebody and it doesn't go this picture perfect way that you see on TV, then those very guys that ask you to go put your life on the line and do that, they're the same ones backing off. So I'd say have some guts, stand up for your guys. And like you said, be transparent, tell the truth, good, bad, and ugly. Just tell them.
Yeah. And that's where we need to go, is we have to be able to tell the truth. And people that know me, they know I'll stand up. If something is right, I'll stand up for it all day. But if something is wrong, as officers, if you're an officer listening to this, we got to be willing to stand up when those things do go wrong, because this is what happens when you don't stand up for the wrong in law enforcement. It makes guys like John look bad. It makes guys that are doing the right things look bad, because everybody assumes that we're like you. I just read an article this week where I think it's Torrance PD just fired like 15 or 14 officers because they had this crazy thread going on where they're saying all sorts of racist, there's bigotry in it, there's all sorts of stuff, a long running list.
I've seen a blip of that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's crazy.
Yeah.
So when we don't stand up against that, it makes it easier for everybody else to come against guys like my boy John that does things for the right reasons.
And let me say this real quick for the public so they can get an idea of why they do not want to defund the police and dumb down who we are. So if you look back in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, in Detroit and Louisiana and New Orleans, man, you had some corrupt police departments. And why was that? Because the cities back then didn't pay their guys anything. They didn't have their back. And so all the good cops left. And what happened? You get the bottom of the barrel. And when you get that, you get what you pay for. You're going to get what you get. And so I think that if we keep supporting and we get the right people in that have the right heart, right mind, that aren't trying to make, none of us got into this for money, right? Or fame. I mean, we got into it because we either wanted to make a difference or it looked fun or whatever the reason, but it definitely wasn't for money. So I think if we put that into perspective and say, we want our police, because right now, 21st century policing is the least corrupt policing's ever been. You've got body cameras, you got cameras on every building. Everybody's got a cell phone. People rat each other out. You're not going to get away with much. You're just not. I mean, for instance, without that text thread and somebody ratting them out, how are those guys going to get fired and pointed out?
Mm-hmm.
But they did, because the police department did the right thing. So see you guys later. Go tip trash cans somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's what I want to let the public know. Even from when I came on 21 years ago, policing has come so far as accountability and the things you can get away with or can do and can't do, whether they're right or wrong. just some of the things that the rain's put on us because of the perception of it.
Man, I love it, man. I love it. Man, this was so good. And John, man, this is just, we love to have you on, man. And whatever we can do to help you and your family, whatever, if you guys need any help, man, please don't hesitate to reach out, because that's what this podcast is about, man. We've had people from all different walks of life on this podcast. It's funny. Last week we had a guy on here that was in prison for 5 or 6 years for shooting somebody, you know? Oh, you know who it was? Yeah. It was Craig. We had Craig on last week. John was at the golf place with me and Craig a few weeks ago. So we have people.
This dude's King Griffey Jr. with the golf club at left swing off sweet 400 yards.
Don't make his head any bigger.
No, I appreciate that. Hey, at least somebody acknowledges
it.
At least somebody acknowledges it. But
he swears he's an athlete, but we're yet to see it.
Here we go, man.
Ain't that right, Billy?
Here we go.
Me and AJ have been sitting here waiting for him from the golf course many a time.
All right, so hey, let's do one. We're gonna do. We usually do this thing. One has to go. I'm literally creating this on the fly right now. So we'll see how it works out. I'm not a soda drinker, but if I was a soda drinker, we're gonna do this about soda. So the way this works, John, is I'm gonna give like 4 different types of drinks for this one, and if we had to get rid of one forever, we want to know which one it will be. So I'm not a soda drinker, but if all of us drink soda, what soda is gonna be to? So number 1 is ginger ale. Number 2 is root beer. Number 3 is Coca-Cola, and number 4 is Sprite.
If I could make them dice, ginger ale would have to go. I'm not a clear guy. Ginger ale and then Sprite.
I agree. Ginger ale's got to go here.
My heart, AJ. I for sure expected you. Now you lost your black card.
First off, I don't drink pop like that. Like I don't drink pop.
Pop.
Well, first of all, me and Billy don't drink pop because we don't call it pop.
Call it soda.
No.
Y'all are also in California.
Everything's Coke here. Whether it's Pepsi, Coke, Big Red, it don't matter. It's Coke.
Oh man.
Yeah, see, that's the weirdest one to me. Everything is Coke.
Oh man. Okay, so AJ and John got ginger ale. What about you?
Well, first of all, orange soda is the best soda. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I only get ginger ale on airplanes for some reason, and I'm going to get rid of it. That's the only time I drink it on an airplane.
Wait, so why even drink it on the airplane?
I don't know. It's just something I do. I have no idea why.
That makes no. There's other options on the airplane, right?
Yes, I do.
But you're going to drink ginger ale on the airplane.
So I've got something like that too, but mine is Chick-fil-A. Like anytime I travel, I need Chick-fil-A. And I will actually not book a flight on Sundays because I need Chick-fil-A in the airport.
I will agree with that. I will agree with that. Anthony, what you getting rid of?
As much as it would hurt me, I would get rid of Coke.
Coke. I'm with Anthony on that. I'm getting rid of Coke. Hands down.
Isn't that like the king of soda?
No, absolutely not.
Because it's woke.
I don't know. Anthony said he's getting rid of Coke because it's woke. Oh man, no, this is so. But man, we appreciate it, guys. And John, thanks so much for coming on, man. Tell your wife and everybody we say thank you because, man, your story needs to be heard and the truth needs to be heard. And so I'm glad you're able to come on. And if you guys are like this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating, 5-star review as we approach the end of the year. I think, how many weeks we got left at the end of the year? 2 weeks? It's funny. Like last year, we couldn't wait for 2020 to be over. We thought 2021 was going to be a better year, man. And it's almost as bad. So we dropped the ball on that one. It did go quicker. You're right about that. So
drug for me, man. I thought it was never going to end.
Oh, I believe it. I could imagine, man. So let me just pray for you. Go ahead. If
I can plug this real quick. 12 seconds in the dark. It's just the number 12 seconds in the dark. You can go on Amazon and order it. Pre-order. It'll be released March 15th.
Oh,
wait,
excellent.
What is that? Is that a book?
It's a book. 12 seconds in the dark.
Oh,
tell us about it really quick.
It just goes over. It touches a little bit of my early career, why I wanted to become a cop. A few things I got into early on, the incident of that night, but the bulk of it is from what all the different trials and tribulations we went through after the event.
12 seconds in the dark.
And where can people find you if you want to plug that too?
Yeah, sergeantmattingly.com or on any of the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's just SGT Mattingly, Sergeant Mattingly. All of them are at Sergeant Mattingly.
Excellent. Let me do a favor. I'm going to say a quick prayer real quick and be on our way out. This is, I just feel led to, but I want to pray for you guys, man. So, Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you, and I just ask that you would just bless my brother John and his family and everybody else, Lord, that's going through tough times, but specifically those that are going through tough times in law enforcement, whatever it is, whether they're going through an investigation that where somebody's accusing them of doing wrong, whether it's they've, been involved in officer-involved shooting and they're suffering from post-traumatic stress, whether it's depression, whatever it is, Lord, I just ask that you would touch them right now. I ask that you would reassure them that it's not their time to give up, Lord, but to continue to stay in that fight. And so, like John says, their time to let that cake bake, Lord. So just continue to be with them, give them the strength, uplift them, give them the endurance, and give them the peace, Lord. Go before them right now. We ask these things for your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen. John, man, I appreciate it, brother. We will stay connected, man. Tell your wife I said hello. Always good chatting with you. And then AJ, man, good seeing you too, brother. And then with that, we'll see y'all next week. Peace.